Do it. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Rock Fantasy Files on the Rock Fantasy YouTube channel. Tonight we debate two iconic American hard rock legends that released debut albums that are celebrating 50th anniversaries in the year 2023. First off is Aerosmith with the debut album by the Boston, Massachusetts-based band. Aerosmith was released on a self-titled record, was released on January 5th, 73 by Columbia Records. Dream On, originally released as a single in 1973, became an American top 10 hit when released on December 27th, 1975. The album peaked at number 21 on the Billboard 200 in the U.S. and has sold over 2 million copies in the U.S. alone. The album was recorded at Intermedia Studios in Boston, Massachusetts, and was produced by Adrian Barber. The album lineup was Stephen Keeler, of course, on lead vocals, and Joe Perry on guitars, backing vocals, Brad Whitford on guitars, Tom Hamilton on bass, and Joey Kramer on drums. So the second album we're going to discuss tonight is pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd, the debut album by Jacksonville, Florida's Lynyrd Skynyrd. Released in 73 also, as we mentioned before. Several of the album songs remain among the band's most well-known. Give Me 3 Steps, Simple Man, and Tuesday's Gone, and Freebird, the last of which was launched to a band to national stardom. This album was also certified gold and double platinum in 1987. It peaked at number 27 on the Billboard 200 in 1975. It was recorded in Studio One in Doraville, Georgia, and produced by Al Cooper. The lineup was Ronnie Van Zant on lead vocals, Gary Rosington, rest in peace, who we just lost, on lead guitar, Alan Callens on lead guitar, Ed King on bass, Billy Powell on the keyboards, and Mr. Bob Burns on the drums. So those are the contestants. I'd like to welcome everyone to the show. We got Mr. Miles Berggren repping us from Louisiana. We got Ovi staying up all night from Norway. We got Count Ralphus. And we've got Tony Dio. We got Mr. Craig Kaminsky, who we stole from the Hudson Valley Squares and Peter Pardo's channel. And we've got Steve Levin from Mechanical Menace. And we've got Danny Barth from the Mighty Aggression. And last but not least, we got our newcomer tonight, Renata from Heavy Horror New York City. Also did vocals for Brooklyn's own Witch Crypt, who's not around anymore, and worked for Troma Films, correct?
Yeah, baby.
So it's great to have you on, and
thanks so much
thanks for joining us and giving us your time tonight. I think we will start off. And Danny, it's not going to be that hard tonight. It's only 2 albums. Are you going to still keep score?
So easy.
You going to keep score still?
Why not?
All right, because usually we have to, like, the last couple of weeks we had like 6 albums, 4 albums, whatever, 18 albums, and Denny had hard work. But I guess we will start off in the South with Mr. Miles Berggren, and he will. Let's hear what you've got to say about these two classes. It's like Dream On versus Freebird tonight. You know, how much more epic can we get?
That's true. Yeah, both of these albums are really good debut albums, if you ask me. I really enjoyed both these records. Starting off with Aerosmith. To me, this is a real good, raw, gritty album from Aerosmith. Yeah, everybody knows they went to the little glam rock phase later on in their career. But I really do enjoy the early stuff from Aerosmith, especially on this album. I know a lot of people kind of talk down about this album, I see, because the production is not that great. But to me personally, I think that the production, it fits fine for this record. It is what it is for me, and I love like the grittiness of this record. And one thing that I really like about it is Steven Tyler's voice on here. It just sounds really gritty and gravelly, and it has like a real southern rock feel to it, in my personal opinion, with his vocal style. Real great songs on here. Songs that I would pick off this album I would pick Somebody's a real good song. Dream On is definitely one of the better songs on here. But my favorite song off of here, and it's a song that I always listen to a lot, is Mama Ken. I love that guitar riff on there. Real good lyrics and everything. It's just like a good chill out, like drinking by the fire song, in my personal opinion. But I would give this record, to me, a 9 out of 10. This is a real good record. And I said this before when we were just chatting before we came on. This is recently, this album, I find myself listening to this Aerosmith album the most, probably. Even though it's not my favorite, I do listen to this record a lot. But real good record. But going into the next one, Lynyrd Skynyrd's debut album.
On cassette.
On cassette. And it sucks because Free Bird part 1 is on one side and part 2 is on the other side. I thought that was just so stupid, but
that is weird.
I got the cassette right here. When we did the Lynyrd Skynyrd episode for this, I picked this album as one of my favorites, and I said it before and I said it again. This is almost like a Lynyrd Skynyrd greatest hits record. All majority of these songs on here would be on a greatest hit compilation for Lynyrd Skynyrd. Being from the South, this Lynyrd Skynyrd is one of the bands that it's like ingrained in your DNA. Like it's like one of the bands like you have to listen. Well, you're gonna listen to growing up, and you can't get away from them living down here. If you live in the South and you've been to like a bonfire or something and they didn't play Lynyrd Skynyrd at the bonfire, you never really went. You were lying, because everybody always plays Skynyrd at a bonfire. You know, losing Gary Rosington recently, that was a big blow. That was really a big, heartfelt thing. He was one of the original members still left, and his
last of them.
Him and Alan Collins is the last, and him and Alan Collins' guitar riffs on here are infectious. It's got that nice Southern rock groove throughout all these songs. These songs are just so catchy. I would challenge anybody to go and listen to Give Me 3 Steps and not like have that song like stuck in your head when you're listening to this record. So this album, to me, 10 out of 10 for me. 3 songs. Give Me 3 Steps has always been one of my favorite Skynyrd songs. I love Poison Whiskey off this album. It's like that good drinking song. Free Bird, obviously. Tuesday's Gone. Simple Man. At this point, I'm just rattling off every song on this record. And 10 out of 10 record, and obviously I'm going with Skynyrd because being from the South, if I don't pick Skynyrd, I'd probably get kicked out the South, and I like living here. I'm going with Skynyrd.
They're gonna make you move to Boston, man.
Yeah, they're gonna make me move up north, and they're gonna say, "Don't ever bring your ass back down here."
You can come live with me, buddy.
We
love Skynyrd here,
dude. I have been telling my old lady I want to go to Canada so bad.
Hey, you're welcome anytime, man.
Well, anyhow, we're gonna go across the pond to Norway and wake up Ovi, our house vampire here that stays up all night.
Yeah. Well, Aerosmith for me, I grew up like with Aerosmith and stuff, but this album has really gone by me. So this was really interesting for me to listen to and kind of relight the fire of Aerosmith for me. I listened to the album. I liked it a lot. I would personally liked it. It had a little more oomph to it, but it is how it is. As for songs, I like Make It, I really liked, and Moving Out, I found really cool. But the song I liked the most was One Way Street. That was a long, good song. I really liked it. So that's what about. I don't have too much to say about it because I've not listened too much to Aerosmith. But the other album, on the other hand, Lynyrd Skynyrd, I have listened to.
Okay.
Yeah. So I came real late into the show with Lynyrd Skynyrd too. I mean, I heard it on TV and stuff, but I'm like was probably in my late 20s before I really started to listen to them like for full. And like Miles said, you would be like rude if you don't mention every song on this album. So I don't know, it's kind of difficult to pick songs, but for me, I chose Freebird and I Ain't the One, and the song I like the most is Things Going On. I really like that song.
Okay.
So it's Skinner for me too.
We got Skynyrd 2-0 here. It's 2-0 Lynyrd Skynyrd. And I forgot to drag out one of my Lynyrd Skynyrd blacklight posters. I got a few I should have put up behind me, but working all day and running around like a nut. But anyhow, we're gonna go to another vampire. We got Count Ralphus, our local metal and rock historian up here in Orange County. What's up, Ralph?
What's up, man? First, I'm going to say that both of these album covers suck.
Wow.
I got the original gatefold vinyl,
Nice.
but this would have been a way better cover.
Fuck yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good.
Lynyrd Skynyrd Smokes would have been a better album title. But yeah, the Aerosmith album cover sucks too. But both great debut albums, 1973. I have to go first with Aerosmith. They first band I ever seen live. I snuck into the concert at the Orange County Fairgrounds. We were talking about it a little bit before the show. It was raining out, and when they did the song "Lightning Strikes," there was lightning going on in the background. It was like perfect, and there was all these drunks flopping around and stuff. And I remember more of the atmosphere of the whole concert than I do the actual band playing, because I was such a little kid and we snuck in and we were just like people watching mostly, you know. But it was a great first concert for me because I went to a million of them after that. But yeah, number 3, I'm gonna go with Walking the Dog. My dogs made me pick that one. Number 2, I like Moving Out, and I'm gonna go with the most popular song, Dream On. I mean, it's always up there in those countdowns to the greatest songs ever. It's always up there with Stairway to Heaven and Freebird, you know, and there's a reason for it. It's a classic. You hear it all the time, but it's a great one. Then I'm gonna go Lynyrd Skynyrd. I'm gonna go number 3, Poison Whiskey. Number 2, Simple Man, and number 1, Freebird. Again, I'm going with the most popular song, but when we did the Led Zeppelin one, I remember I tried to not do Stairway to Heaven. Then later on, I looked back at it. I'm like, I should have just picked Stairway to Heaven. It's something classic. How can I put something above it? So, yeah, you know, I think it's the best Southern rock album of all time. Maybe one of the best like debut albums. I mean, like Miles was saying, how it's like a best of album. Every song, even if you're not a Skynyrd fan, you would have heard all these songs at one point or another. The Give Me 3 Steps song, it's such a song. I always kind of hated the lyrics to it. I always thought he's like running away. I think he should have took his poison whiskey bottle and smashed the guy in the head and took his gun and the girl and then made his way to the door. But yeah, so I'm gonna go. I would say it's a 10 for Southern rock albums for sure, and you know, it's a great album.
All righty. Lynyrd Skynyrd's getting out the broom here. It's sweeping up everything. And so far. As we go next in line, I'm going to bring in our brand new panelist, if she is ready. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Renata is here. So let's hear what you've got to say on these 2 albums from heavy metal horror.
Of heavy metal. So I will start with Aerosmith. This one was in 1973, indeed, released by Columbia Records.
Yeah.
Dream On was released as a single in 73. It became an American top 10.
Yeah.
In December of 1975. I did my homework. I did my homework.
Yes.
And then album number 21 on Billboard in 1976. Anyway, number 3, I'll say Write Me a Letter, because it's singing about a letter from a lover he's waiting for. So that's very intense.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's also the first song that they played harmonica. So that's cool.
Yeah.
And it starts with a drum line and goes into a slow blues jam. So that's kind of like a really cool transition. Number 2, I'll say Walking the Dog, because the first thing that rang my mind was Beavis and Butthead saying, washing the dog, washing the dog. I don't know if you remember that episode, but if you know, you know. And that song, it's actually like an original song from an R&B artist called Rufus Thomas Jr., which was released in 1963, and it's been covered by the Rolling Stones in 1964, the Kingsmen in 1965, Rat in 1983, and
Mm-hmm.
Green Day in 1993.
Wow.
Yes, I like the groove to it, and the vocals are very cool. Like, yeah, very raw. And then number 1, it'll be Dream On. You know, it's an iconic song, and you know, it's
Mhm.
pretty cool. And it's about the hunger to be someone. Dream until your dreams come true. So that's pretty cool. And then for Lynyrd Skynyrd in 1973 as well. It was released in Georgia. The producer was Al Cooper. 1974 it became a gold one. 1987 double platinum. Then in 2001 the album was re-released, and yes, blah 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 blah. So number 3 will be Tuesday's Gone, because he's writing the blues. He talks about leaving his woman at home and how he feels about it. And I have like a true feeling about this song. And number 2 will be Simple Man, because it's one of the most beloved tracks of Skynyrd. Combining storytelling and guitar became a rock and roll anthem. This song was written by the time Van Sant and Rossington's moms passed away around the same time.
Mhm.
So they just like sat down, talked about it, and the song was written within 1 hour. Everything, they shared memories about their moms, and it's pretty much they wrote what their mom would say to them. So that's kind of sweet. And
Mhm.
number 1 will be Poison Whiskey, and that one is kind of personal because I quit drinking like 4 years ago, and I was a whiskey fiend. Like, I would drink a bottle of Jack Daniels on my own on my day off, and I wanted more, you know? So for me, stop drinking specifically whiskey like was like a big deal. So I mean, I respect, you know, whoever does it, but like I personally think it's a poison indeed. So yeah. So that's pretty much it.
Poison Whiskey. It's hitting it. That's a good song. But
Talking,
Yes, it is.
talking about that gut rot whiskey.
Anyway.
Cool. So well, thanks for your input. And I'm gonna wrap around because I got one more question for everybody when we're done with this tonight. I'll come up with a good one. All right, Tony Dio, it's in my center square. We're gonna go back to the south and see what he's got. He's probably got to pick Skynyrd too, or he's gonna get shot down North Carolina.
Well, it's a no-brainer. Yeah, that's a no-brainer. The debut from Aerosmith, I like this album. I think it's a really good album overall, but I really don't feel like that in quotes that they got their wings until that next album, Get Your Wings, and that's when it really started off. This album is really raw, and it's probably a lot of stuff that they were just working on when they were just starting out, of course. I mean, with the covers like Walking the Dog and so forth. But it's a good heavy rock album, and it's very influential. And like we were talking before we went on air tonight about some of the glam bands in the 80s. I mean, they definitely fell into the Aerosmith fold. Aerosmith was probably behind the Stones. They were probably known as the bad boys of rock, you know.
Yes, yeah.
For sure. They took it a little further than the Stones, really.
The toxic twins.
And you've got the Toxic Twins with Tyler and also it's definitely for Joe Perry. And but this is some great songs on here. I really like the opening track, Make It. It's a good kickoff track on the album. Mama Kim, second favorite on here for sure. I mean, I love Dream On. I think it's a great song, but classic rock radio has kind of killed it for me. But it is a great song, so I'm going to definitely pick it because it is such a fantastic song. I know it was just mentioned that it wasn't a hit until '75, so I guess they reissued it or re-released it a couple of years later after they started picking up more fans, and then they had a hit with it after maybe the third album had come out. Lynyrd Skynyrd. We got it, you know. I mean, hell, my last name's Leonard. I love Skynyrd. Being from the South, of course, it's just kind of it's just part of your DNA. You hear it all the time. But you know, I remember as a child, I remember my brother was into them, and I remember hearing about the plane crash, but I don't really recall ever really listening to Skynyrd until I probably got around 10 or 11 years old. And getting to know who they were. And then when I started really getting into rock and roll, the first thing that I purchased from Skynyrd was the gold and platinum double LP, you know, and that had all the greatest hits on it. But like Miles, my first version of Pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd was on cassette. And like he said, Freebird is part one is on side one, and then you have to flip the tape over and you get the rest of it. When I hear the song today on the radio or whatever, I still hear it fade out
and go
that spot because it's just, you know, it's just embedded in my brain hearing it like that for so many times. I played that tape to death. And so it was good to get it on CD finally when it did come out on CD. But and it is the greatest hits for Skynyrd. It's so many good songs on here. I mean, everything is good on it. It's hard to pick anything. Even, you know, Things Going On could be the weakest track on it, and it's still a cool track. I love the simplicity. It's just a boogie kind of country song. But if I got to pick my top three on here, I'm going to go I Ain't the One. It's just a kick-ass good song. And I got to go Simple Man just for the story. And I like Give Me 3 Steps a lot. It's the clever lyrics of Ronnie Van Zant. He was such a great lyricist. You know, Hey There Fella with the Hair Colored Yellow. I mean, yeah, fella with the
what you
yellow.
trying to prove?
Not yellow, but yellow. So yeah, I mean that's so cool. But yeah, it's just a great one. So I got to go with that for number one, definitely. And yeah, Skynyrd, you know, I mean, I've been lucky. I never got to see him back in the day, but I was lucky enough to see him after they did the Reformed. And you know, I've worked with them several times over the years, you know, working concerts and getting to be a runner and, you know, work directly with the band, had contact with, you know, the band and so forth. So it was always cool. And they were always really, really great people to work for. Just so nice and down to earth, no egos and rock star attitudes.
Cool. Lynyrd Skynyrd just sweeping the floor here. We got Mr. Craig Kaminsky up next from the state of Pennsylvania. He wants me to drive to Reading, PA, and watch Possessed and Uada out there. I heard.
Well, you know, the mayor of Middletown is in the area. You know, we got a Secret Service protection crew to come here. So
okay.
But again, thanks again for having me, and good to see everyone again. Nice to meet you, Renata. And
Nice to meet you.
so I guess I'm going to buck the trend. So I'll start with Lynyrd Skynyrd, and there's and full disclosure, I don't own either of these albums, and so I'm familiar with these, but I don't. But so this was a good exercise for me to go back and listen to some of these songs that I'm not as familiar with. I like the Skynyrd album. It's just that and surprisingly, as others have already mentioned, for a debut, the sound quality is really good for this, for obviously on a major label and everything, but it sounds like a seasoned band well into their career, just sonically when you hear this. But my personal favorite songs, I'm going to go with number 3, I Ain't the One. I love the really good kickoff track. Really enjoyed that. I'm going to cheat a little bit. My second favorite one is Down South Jukin', because depending on whatever reissue CD you get, that's included on there, and it's on the Golden Platinum album too. So that's how I'm most familiar with it. And my number 1 is also Poison Whiskey. So it's to agree with some of the others that have already mentioned that. But it's a really good fun album, and it really is just a case one definition of Southern rock, and it is a classic for a reason. I just happen to, personal preference, I just kind of like the Aerosmith one a little bit better. I like it's almost like it's a different person when you hear Steven Tyler, besides Dream, a few of the other songs I'm not as familiar with, but just the way his voice sounds, it's almost like a totally different guy. Really good gritty quality to it. Still nice sound to it. Not as polished, and I'm totally fine with that. A lot of memories of playing Aerosmith, but at least but it's from my brother having the Greatest Hits album, the one that was red and white, that had about 10 songs or so on it. It's one of those, it sold 1 billion copies. I used to borrow that from my brother and sit and play that all the time. So those were the songs that I was most familiar with. But the my favorite songs from this, going with my number 3, I would say, is Mama Kin. Really nice, fun, strong rocker. My second would be the opening track, Make It. And my favorite song is Moving Out on this, which could almost be like a Southern rock song lyrically, as it says in the beginning, with the city's moving in and and everything. It sounds like something that a Southern rock band could crank out and be totally fine with it. I never saw either of these bands live, or excuse me, I never saw Aerosmith live before, but
Wow.
I did happen to see Lynyrd Skynyrd in. I had to double check my stubs. It was June 12th of 2001. I saw them in Scranton, Pennsylvania at Montage Mountain. They were the headliner along with Deep Purple and Ted Nugent.
We were there. Me and Steve were there.
Okay. At least the curious factor of it was that the show was June 12th, 2001, and Leon Wilkeson died July 27th, 2001. So about 6 weeks after the show is when he had passed away. But it was a really cool show to see, and there were obviously several Wilkeson, Powell, and Gary Ross, and I guess Ricky Medlock was on guitar, and probably Huey Thompson, I suppose, at the time. One other thing just to point out, if you want some more muscled up versions of some of these Aerosmith songs, I recommend this tribute album called Right in the Nuts. It's from
Wow, cool.
it's from 2000 on Small Stone Records. It has a really double disc. All the songs are from Rockin' a Hard Place backwards, so there's not going to be any dude looks like a lady or Janie's got a gun or whatever. But all really muscled up versions of these, like Fireball Ministry doing Moving Out, Five Horse Johnson doing Bright Light Fright. So they do a lot of like the songs that some deep tracks and not just the hits. But this was actually some of these songs on Aerosmith's debut that I wasn't as familiar with were on here, so I was already familiar with those. But just between the two of these, Aerosmith was my personal favorite.
Great. Hey, a little bit about that night that you were in Wilkes-Barre, which we didn't know you that, but man, me and Steve, we drove up there to see Deep Purple, right, Steve?
Yeah. Yes.
And we got up there, and I mean, it was the first time I had seen Deep Purple since Perfect Strangers. and we weren't sure if that was Ian Gillan on stage at first, because like, who's this guy? Doesn't even look like him, but it was Ian. And I thought that night, I remember me and you sitting on the hill. I mean, we didn't really go for Skynyrd, but Skynyrd totally won me over that night. It's like the whole crowd was singing every lyric to every song with that Skynyrd set, and that was a great night. I mean, the Nuge was cool too. We saw the Nuge, but that was
when I went to that show, we were just hoofing it in, and Ted Nugent was starting. He opened with Paralyzed, and we were just hoofing it in as soon as he started. And one of the things I remember most is Tommy Aldridge was his drummer on for that tour, and he was just insane, just the way he was. Just playing those classic Nugent songs. So that was really cool to see.
Montage Mountain, surprisingly enough, is one of the closest venues to Middletown that people don't even think about. Like, it literally takes like 45 to 50 minutes for me to get out of my house, get on 84 and drive to Montage. It's probably Bethel. Everybody thinks it's the closest. It's about the same, especially if you get traffic coming out of Bethel.
Who headlined that show? Deep Purple or Skynyrd?
Skynyrd. Yeah. And I guess it's time to move over to the person that went to that concert with me, Mr. Levin, and then we'll go to Denny Barth, and I'll round out this episode. I got a question for each one of you about these bands.
I'm nervous.
You're nervous? No, it's gonna be easy.
I'm just kidding. Say hello to him.
Is that the Crypt Keeper?
The one and only, imitated, never duplicated.
All right. Well, he can answer the question if you don't want. Cool.
Anyway, hello everybody. It's nice to be here. Nice to see everybody. Of course, I always appreciate it. And listening to the differences of opinions is great. And I'm gonna have to side with Craig on this one, with Aerosmith. But I'm going to start off with Skynyrd, of course. And, hey, I grew up in Maryland, and I have relatives down in Georgia and Florida. And I'm going to tell you what, man, you had to listen to Lynyrd Skynyrd, especially if you were growing up in the 70s, And, I love a lot of Southern rock. Molly Hatchet probably being my favorite. Those first couple Molly Hatchet albums were just too much. I mean, especially if you play guitar. Those albums are just, it's almost kind of like, without trying to commit blasphemy here, it's kind of like Skynyrd on steroids a little bit, but I'm jumping off the subject. But yeah, I mean, these songs, if you went to any party, you heard these songs, they were definitely a staple of the 70s, and they are Southern rock there. I mean, if you had to get a dictionary definition of Southern rock, it should just say Lynyrd Skynyrd, and that would sum it up perfectly. So yeah, this was a great debut album. You got Tuesday's Gone on there, and every time I hear that, all I can think of is Happy Gilmore. I don't know if anybody ever seen it.
Yeah.
I thought it Dazed and Confused when the keg's empty, when that song's playing.
Oh yeah, absolutely, no doubt. Give Me 3 Steps, that was classic Ronnie Van Zant. That was the way he told a story. That was the way he told stories in his songs sometimes. And if you listen to the lyrics, there's some great stuff in there. Saturday Night Special, it's not on this album, but listen to the story there. And That Smell, just great stuff. But favorite songs on here, I Ain't the One might be my favorite. I mean, ripping leads on that song. It really starts the album off super, super strong. It almost makes you think that this album's just going to be a barn burner from start to finish. But, then they kick into Tuesday's Gone, which is a little bit more laid back, and Simple Man, of course. Poison Whiskey, everybody's already said it, obviously, for good reason, because we all have great taste, and that's another one of the best songs on there. But I'd have to say, Freebird, that is the Southern rock answer to Stairway to Heaven, which was already said, but that's the truth. That's exactly what that is. And then if you bounce over to Aerosmith, you have Dream On, which is the American answer to Stairway to Heaven, but it doesn't really have that kind of end, which is so great. So yeah, Skynyrd, great debut. I would give it, it's not my favorite Southern rock album. It's not my favorite album from them either. I would give it a 9 out of 10. Just fantastic album. Like I said, I would be committing blasphemy to say anything otherwise. And when I went back down south, I'd probably get my ass beat and, deserve it. even though I do get, well, it's been a while, but I used to get called a Yankee, you know, and that was
Yeah,
for my
you have?
that was for my relatives in Georgia when I was living in Maryland, no less. So now that New York, God only knows what I'd be called. So we're gonna jump over to Aerosmith, and I don't know what you can say. I mean, a lot of people forget, but you know, and it's because of songs like "Dude Looks Like a Lady" and "Love in the Elevator" and shit like that. But Aerosmith was one of the greatest American hard rock, classic rock bands of all time. I mean, their first, 7 releases right up through Night in the Ruts were just legendary. And I mean, just classic songs. Steven Tyler. I always used to say that Joe Perry was such a huge influence on my guitar playing. And then I found out that Brad Whitford was actually playing a lot of the leads because Joe Perry was just too fucked up to do it, I guess. You know? But, you know, great slide guitar, which I just love slide guitar. And one of my favorite things. This album, my favorite songs are "Make It," the drum shuffle in the beginning of that's just so cool the way that starts off. I love "One Way Streets," just a classic rock song, and especially I love the line. I know my brother Spike is on the level because I actually have a brother Spike. So shout out to my brother Spike. Well, you know, I mean, he's not truly.
I know you do.
My brother, you know, and "Write Me a Letter" is like very if you listen to it, I don't know if anybody knows the band Budgie. That song really reminds me of Budgie a lot, but it's almost like an American version of what they were doing. Mama Kin's "Balls Out Rock" are probably my favorite tune on the album, and I do love "Walking the Dog," which is just a great version of it. I equally surprisingly, I love the Rat version of it. That's another Johnny Z story. I remember one of the first times going into Johnny Rock and Roll Heaven by myself and him saying, if you don't know that Rad album there, this is back. It wasn't even on the, it was on the first label they were on. I don't even know. It was an independent label. And I'm not sure what it was. Tony, you might remember.
Time Coast.
I'm sorry?
Yep. Time Coast.
Okay, yeah. So that was Johnny Z suggested that. He said he loved the version of "Walking the Dog" on that. And you know, that guy knew music. You know, that was a part. But I'm going to have to give Aerosmith, I'm going to also give this a 9 out of 10. I'm going to give it a slight edge over the Skynyrd. This is not my favorite Aerosmith album. Both of these bands, one thing that they never suffered from either of these was their soft, you know, there's a lot of times people say they have the sophomore curse. Both of these bands' second albums were equally impressive. And they really just kept up right on rolling for quite a period of time. And, you know, if not for the tragedy with Skynyrd, I'm sure that they would have continued to just release some real classic stuff. So those are my choices. And, you know, thank you very much for allowing me to be here and voice my opinion.
And if you're in Middletown, April 29th, you can see Steve Levin at the Quinn Spins with Mechanical Menace.
Yeah, please. I'll dedicate leads to you and
an abuse ritual and whomever else.
I can drink tequila together, not whiskey.
There you go.
Whiskey.
No poison whiskey, just tequila for you.
Tequila boy, myself.
Anyhow, so we got 2 in a row for Aerosmith out their big streak of Skynyrd, and now we're going to the Northwest Territories of Canada to visit Sasquatch, Denny Barth. Welcome. And our scorekeeper.
So easy tonight. You guys are making it really easy for me. But yeah, so Skynyrd, Aerosmith, definitely 2 American institution. And you know, not much difference up here in Canada. They're both widely loved bands. So for me, I'll start with Aerosmith first. I think I have both these records in CD, cassette, and vinyl. That's
okay.
That's how much these albums are, you know, through the years. But and both these albums actually age really well. Like when you listen to them now, they sound like, you know, like rock and roll, you know, like early 70s rock and roll, and they both great, very listenable records. So Aerosmith for me was huge, of course, when I grew up. This is not my favorite Aerosmith album. My favorite album of all time by any band is Aerosmith Rocks.
Wow.
So I have massive respect for the band. On this album, it took me like actually like when I remember when I was a kid, I thought it was not heavy enough. Like I used to go to like Toys in the Attic, Rocks, and I did like the version of these songs on live bootleg better than on the first record. Like Mamakin was very heavy on live bootleg. And you know, like Joe Perry, similar to my friend Stephen Levin, huge influence on my guitar playing. I got a lot of my licks from like learning Joe Perry's guitar playing. Which on this album, it's not already where he was later on. Seems more like, you know, like straight up like Rolling Stone, New York Dolls type of songs. But still like a great record. I remember so a few stories about Aerosmith and that record. So of course in the 70s you used to have like those basement parties with girls and, you know, slow dancing when you're like 12, 13, 14, whatever. And you know, I used to like to my friends say like, I hate Dream On. It's such a bad song. Like it's too soft. I don't want to listen to it. But when you could get a girl to dance with you, then it's great. Hey, put Dream On, right? So it's funny that's how it works. I you know, like on this album, definitely like for me, Mama Kin, really love this song. I love Make It. Really love that song. Walking the Dog, One Way Street, lots of good material. And the older I'm getting, the more it's one of the Aerosmith that I'll go to and listen to. Of course, growing up in Montreal, and you know, I say it many times. My dad was from Connecticut, and I went to school in elementary school in Connecticut, and all my family lives in Fall River, just outside of Boston. So I spent a lot of time in New England, New Hampshire, and all, you know, those areas. And I had the chance to see like Aerosmith in Boston. So we went down for the summer, and it's like 1979, 1980. Early, like mid, I would say it was summer 1980. And we had tickets to go see Aerosmith. And of course, I was so like excited to see Joe Perry and Brad Whitford live. Get to the show, it's not Brad Whitford and Joe Perry on stage. It was like Jimmy Crespo and some other dude.
Yeah.
Rush. Like I was just like, you know, my anticipation to see that guy live, and then I go to the show and they were both gone from the band. So it was, you know, when you're 14 and you're like, it's your idols and they're not at the show, there's nothing that the other two guys can do that's gonna like make up for it. So, but yeah, great band. That's my number 2 record, I guess. And then for number 1, and we talked about it in the Skynyrd episode. You know, I'm a huge Southern rock fan. My dad, after retiring, moved to Florida, so I spent a lot of time down there. I didn't see Skynyrd when you know, like Ronnie and all those guys were alive, but I saw them like in the 90s in the Everglades, right in the swamp.
Wow.
In a native reserve down there with Charlie Daniels. It was like Skynyrd, Charlie Daniels Band, and Molly Hatchet.
Wow.
Wow.
And like
So
I
cool.
met, I was just like similar again. No wonder I'm friend with Mr. Levin. I just like everything he likes. But yeah, I'm a huge Molly Hatchet fan as well. But yeah, so like on this album, it is like a greatest hits. And I had to learn like most of these songs on guitar when I joined that cover band called Lynyrd Skynyrd. We were based out of Gainesville, Florida, and there was a guy from Poison in the band and a guy from Black Rose. They never really talked to me that much. I was more like an nérd guy. I was driving to the shows in my own car. That was some wild years, like playing in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and like in Biloxi, like crazy places.
Biloxi.
Yeah. But yeah, so I learned all those songs on guitar, most of them. I love Simple Man. I mean it's to me it's almost much more closer of an anthem than Freebird. Like Simple Man Through My Life, like it's kind of the go-to song that if you're in down in the freaking the worst part of your life, you're at the bottom of the barrel, it's the type of song that you can put on is going to lift your spirits. So Simple Man, huge song, and same as Tuesday's Gone. I think I like Tuesday Is Gone more than at the end of like Dazed and Confused, the movie. It's so well placed as a song. The party's over. He's trying to get the beer out of the keg. There's nothing coming out. Like you cannot have a better like song moment in a movie. So Tuesday's Gone. Love like Freebird. Learned the solo. I don't think I ever played it right, but I learned it. And I like the influence of Ricky Medlock on this album. Like people don't always talk about like Ricky Medlock from like Blackfoot and then Return into Skynyrd like later on, but a lot of those songs were written with him around the band. And even though we didn't play on the record, like there is like I feel like his presence to like the songwriting and the song progression, which then like I think they had another album that came out with like earlier demos. I forgot the name of the album, like
First and
last.
First and last, yes.
First and Last, right? And
Yeah.
that album has some great songs with Ricky Medlock singing and like playing drums on them. So yeah, a great album. There's not a single song on that album I don't like. Like it's all like it's a 10 out of 10 for me. I would give the Aerosmith like an 8 out of 10. And this one it's got to be a 10 out of 10. That's like and I think both these albums also when they came out were not like instant success. It took a while for people to go back and then got to it. But yeah,
both of them became like the singles came out like Renato said, and I mentioned that the singles weren't until 75 of these.
Yeah. And I'm glad that Craig mentioned Downside Jukin, because that was my favorite Skynyrd song to play like in a freaking bar with people drunk and screaming at me like stupid Canadian. Like it was such a
Play Freebird.
It was such
a in French.
Yeah. No, thank God not. But yeah, like so down south. But yeah, so that's for me. Like I would go like Aerosmith number 2, Skynyrd number 1, but the Aerosmith aged really well. Both great albums. That's it.
Man, I guess it's my turn, huh? I could flip a coin on either one of these right now because it's been tough for me to pick. I think, man, how do I put Skynyrd at number 2? They're one of my favorite bands. And Aerosmith sold out. But Skynyrd didn't get the chance to sell out. But I'm going to go with Skynyrd for number 2. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry, Southern Rockers. I love Skynyrd. I still go to see him. I'm going to go see him in May, even though Ricky's the only guy left. But my song off of this is the third one. Is I Ain't the One. Poison Whiskey is one of those deeper tracks. It's just so good. Such a great song. And of course, Freebird. I'm going with that for my number 1. How could you not? And that Aerosmith record, going back to this record, I absolutely loved Aerosmith when I was a teenager. I had rocks and one of those little 8-track things, little square things you'd carry around in school.
Yep.
I had that, and I had my Aerosmith rocks 8-track in that thing. And I just remember skipping school all the time, listening to rocks. And going back to listen to this record, I think maybe I picked this record just because I'm a little played out on a lot of the Skynyrd songs. Sometimes we talk about this where these songs, you just hear them so much that maybe I went with this for a little bit fresh. I love Moving Out for number 3. Moving Out. I got a tie on this one. I'm gonna go with Mamakin and Moving Out for my number 3. I could pull a Pete Pardo. I'd get yelled at if it was on Hudson Valley Squares right now, but I'm not on there, so I can go down it. And Make It. Just kicking that song off with Make It. It's such a hard rocking song. I love it. And how do you go against Dream On? Dream On is just such a great class. And that's going to be my question for everybody tonight. If you get to pick one song to listen to right now, I'm going to pick Dream On right now. But how do you go? Is it if you take the albums away and it's the singles? Freebird, Dream On. Which one do you go with?
Freebird.
All right, so Freebird for Denny. Miles.
Freebird all day.
Ovi.
Freebird.
Count Ralphus.
Freebird.
Tony Dio.
Freebird.
Craig.
Probably Freebird.
11.
What song is it you want to hear?
Renata.
Simple Man.
Ah, you cheated. I'm supposed to be Freebird or Dream On. All right, I guess it's Freebird gets the sweep on the head-to-head, this has been a fun episode. I was already picking next week. I think we're going to go Iron Maiden, Peace of Mind versus Merciful Fate, Melissa from 1983.
That's a tough one.
But next Wednesday, I'm not going to be here, and I don't think Levin's going to be here either because I plan on going to the city to hang out with Crizian. Crizian and Vader are in New York City on Wednesday, and I feel it's my due duty to go see and support Crizian on tour. So
One of Kelly's favorite groups.
We may have to take a week off next week. So we've got Hudson Valley Squares crew on Monday. I know we're doing top 5 start off songs on Monday night, but I hate to take a week off, but I think we're going to follow it up a week after. So I'm going to give everybody Wednesday off next week, unless they show up at Vader and Crizian, and I'll see you guys there.
We'll do a live episode from there.
Cool. Yeah, we'll do a live show. We'll have Moses pick his favorites. And I don't know. So, hey, anybody that's watching, if you like what the channel's doing, please hit like and subscribe and all that jazz. And then pick your favorite between the 2 albums, your Aerosmith and Lynyrd Skynyrd Memories. There's a little bit there's another connection between these 2 bands. If you look into some of the news articles, if you Google them both together, that Joe Perry and Aerosmith were supposed to be on that plane that went down with Skynyrd on. And there's a story about how they turned the plane down, and they felt like someone was watching over them because the plane, of course, crashed, that they would have been on that flight. And the other connection with these 2 are, if you go see Skynyrd, at least maybe I haven't seen them within a year or 2 now since the pandemic, but when they come on stage, right before they come on, they play Back in the Saddle. And they've been doing that for a bit now. So there's an Aerosmith Skynyrd connection there and I believe they did tour together in the 70s. The
little connection I got with Skynyrd being from Louisiana is that they were actually flying to Baton Rouge, Louisiana for a show, and they crashed in Mississippi. So they were going to Louisiana to play a show when the plane crashed.
And they were just such a badass band, Skynyrd, and just being from the South and being just simple people like Simple Man, and doing these shows and going out with all the big bands from the Southern Rock. That it was just so great.
I've known people that actually have the ticket stub for the show.
Oh wow!
That they didn't make it to because of the tragedy that happened.
Sad.
Once again, I guess we're gonna wrap this up. Anybody got anything else they want to add?
I got one thing.
All right.
Doing this episode, it reminded me of me and Steve Levin in the like early 90s were playing basketball one time, and we got into a big argument about Aerosmith. Do you remember that, Steve?
Yes, I do. Actually, a couple, because I used to have Aerosmith written on I almost wore it the other day. I have a jacket and has like suicidal tendencies and Slayer and nuclear assault and all this stuff on it, and in big letters Aerosmith. And Ralph used to be like, Aerosmith, why do you have Aerosmith on your jacket? You know, no, they suck, Aerosmith.
No, that's what it was. I remember we were playing basketball. It was a bunch of stoners. We'd play basketball. We all sucked, but we just like get stoned and play basketball. And I noticed on his jeans, he had Aerosmith logo written on there. And this is at a time where we were like immersed in death metal and black metal. So I was like, what the fuck is that? And this was like Walk This Way with Run DMC was out at the time. And like all the real lame Aerosmith was starting to come out. So I like offended him at the time. And I didn't go backwards until like 20 years, like after listening to the extreme metal, where I finally started like going backwards to my roots and appreciating all the stuff that came before extreme metal. But I wanted to show Steve, like I've read all of these books. I read the autobiography of Aerosmith. I even read Joey Kramer's book, and I read Joe Perry's book, and Steven Tyler's book. So I just think he would find it pretty funny.
No, I know. Later, I love that, man. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, you grow up at a certain time, and when you grow up at a certain time, it's like whatever music you're listening to at that point is what you love the most. So if you grew up listening to stuff that was heavier and guys weren't singing in voices that you know, the high pitched voice like that, where guys were actually singing like Jeff Tate and stuff like that, you're like, what the fuck is that? You know? And you want to hear just guys like really like get into it, but you know, then you go back. You know, with me, it was all subject. Like I learned so much just from my parents, because my parents listened to everything from like Ramsey Lewis to like Stevie Wonder, and then they listened to Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix and the Rolling Stones, and then FM radio was amazing back then. So you know, I learned so much from that too. But I like that one. Heaviest stuff. And even today, it's like after I listened to Aerosmith and Skynyrd, I had to put on like some brutal like slam metal. Because, you know, I go.
Hey,
so,
I think I got a quick Aerosmith story. So I went to see him in the I guess it was the early '90s one time when they had one of the records, the hit records, was out. But he got some free tickets and went. And they were really good seats. And me and a friend went. And we're sitting down and they're just playing all this newer stuff, you know. It's like, whatever. All of a sudden, they busted into Lord of the Thighs. And we're like, yes. And everybody starts sitting down, going to the bathroom, you know, going to get beer. Is this a new song? And we're just like, we're the only two people standing up rocking out because everybody just didn't know it, you know. It's just sad.
Yeah, I've had it so many shows. Even when we went to see Merciful Fate, I was screaming the songs, and I'm looking around me. I'm like, what are these people? Like a bunch of like statues? Like nobody's like getting into it. I'm like screaming out evil and everything.
I was getting into Merciful Fate.
I got wrong with this guy, but you know me, I don't care. So whatever. But like, I just get amazed. Like music moves me to the point where I'm not standing still. You know, sometimes I'm getting in the pit even still. I try not to sometimes, but it happens.
Yeah. I like that. Now, when I see you in Mechanical Menace, are you going to have the Aerosmith written on your coat? Because I'm going to say, why the fuck you got Aerosmith written on it?
I'm going to get it right under my eye.
Yeah. Okay. But Jay will, now Ralph won't yell at you, but Jay will yell at you.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Absolutely. 100%.
Well, anyhow, we're going to wrap this episode up. I'd like to thank Miles, Obi, Count Ralphus, Tony Dio, Craig Kaminsky, Steve Levin, Danny Barth, and of course, our debut with Renata tonight. I hope you'll come back and hang out with us some more and be part of our crew.
Hell yeah. Thanks for having me.
And we'll talk to you guys all in a week or so. We're back on the Rock Fantasy YouTube channel. And